You're on.
Hi. Good afternoon. I really appreciate being able to be here and share with you. And I really have a lot of gratitude for all the grandparents out there and all of the other people taking care of the children, putting all this effort in. And I'm hoping that some of the things that you see today or hear today, will help you in your journey. Or if you're having to make a decision, I want to share just a few things that I've learned and observed, because I've also been in my community and helped others, and I know that this is a huge issue. Well, a couple of years ago, we had Jolene come to our grandparents raising grandchildren conference here in Portland, Oregon, and one of the things that will stay with me, because one of the things that Jolene talked about was when she came, she really prayed about what she wanted to talk about, and the one word that came to her was exhaustion. And everyone in that room, I could see tears in that room, because everybody in the room completely related to that. And I'm going to introduce you to my wiggly partners here, who are only going to be here for a few moments because I asked them to come in. They're going to sing a song for our opening here. The two that I'm raising here are this one here, and I'm going to apologize for my delay here, but the two that I'm raising is this one here, and this one here. This is Sweet Song Spotted Eagle, and this is Aurora Spotted Eagle. And
Sweet Song.
Their cousin, more like a sister, she lives here too with my daughter, is Violet Wilson, and they're going to sing a song that one of their uncles made for them. So go ahead, girls.
This is a sweet song I sing to you, my night sky lullaby. You belong to the stars and the moon in the sky. I just wanted to let you know that I love you. This is the sweet song I sing to you, my night sky lullaby. Hey yo, hey yo, hey yo.
Awesome. Thank you, girls. Okay, you guys can go eat the rest of your lunch. And I am going to just really quick, I'm going to change my background. We're going to put in our picture here.
Eat your lunch first and then eat.
And can you girls please close the door when you go out? I really appreciate it. You sang beautifully.
Get in there. Please eat it after.
Okay, come on. All righty, thank you. So the first thing that I want to talk about is, how did we become parents of our grandchildren? Well, I know that there is multiple pathways to get here, and I think I've seen them all or experienced them. There's that traditional, that grandmas girl, grandma's boy, or grandpa's girl, or grandpa's boy. Kind of that traditional, they just slowly, get captured by one of the grandparents and they go live with them. My oldest, or even intentionally, the grandparent is going to raise a child, and this is done in a really supportive way. There's generally no conflict around it. It happens and it's natural, traditional way, and and it's good, and sometimes I had a son that was raised by my mother, and he was there from about 12 until he left, and done great, but there's also those difficult decisions. The parent gets too busy, or they're just partying too much, and they drop the child off, and pretty soon that's where that child is. I have a sister, that where this happened to, and it's not happened to. She loved her granddaughter. She raised her, but there was a lot of conflict in the relationship with her daughter. I'll talk about that a little bit later. There's also death, and this has been happening so much this year, not just of elders, but it's, we know that in Indian country, young people are dying too. I just had a friend of mine who brought his grandson up here and is going to be raising him after losing his daughter to COVID, and so definitely there's going to be grief involved. There's also going to be potentially some legal issues, and then the one that causes the most conflict is those DHS removals, child welfare removals. These always cause a lot of trauma, and there is always potential clashes, stability issues, and some of these can even impact decisions, when the child is an adult. You know, um, there's also all those boundary issues, with your child, the birth child, the birth mother or father of your grandchild. So I just want to touch on some of this today, but I also want to talk about self-care because I think it's just so, so critical, in making these decisions. When I first made the decision to raise my two grandkids, and the two grandkids, that you just introduced, are on in this picture or on the left and right side of me, with my other granddaughter in the middle there that also lives in our house. They're 9 and 7 years old, and they have actually been with me mostly since they were born. However, there was a lot of trauma that occurred, particularly with Sweet Song, um, the oldest one, because of DHS. She did not experience this kind of trauma when she was with her mom, but she got moved around her first few years. It was always with family members, and we were able to be on it and thwarted one attempt to take her away from the family completely, because we were given word they were moving her that day, and we were able to get that stopped through some interventions, and but she really experienced a lot of trauma because of all of that moving, and so I really had to think about, do I have the capacity to do this? Can I give them what they need? The one thing I know they needed was unconditional love. That's what all our kids need, is that unconditional love. And what do I need to learn about more about? And where was I willing to build capacity? And do I have adequate supports? And I really had to think about, what am I willing to give up? Because when I took them on fully, I was a freewheeling grandma. If I wanted to head down to Vegas, well, I used my mama benefits through Alaska, because I have one daughter that is an Alaska flight attendant, and I'd jump on a plane and I'd just go wherever I wanted to, have whatever kind of fun. I was living alone. I was living the life I never had before, because I've been having kids since I was a kid, and I've been taking care of everybody, for many, many years, and so here I was, I had these great benefits. I had extra money because, I finally, for the first time, was stable in my life, good job. Took me a long time to get here. I have a lot of years in recovery, but I had to think about, what am I willing to give up? How's my physical health? It wasn't the best, still not the best, but I went, and you have to get your physical, make sure that, that the doctor signs off that you can do this, but I also had to look at my own behavioral health, because certainly, even though, I had close to 40 years, and right now I do have 40 years in recovery, that I had to, I still am working. I mean, we're a never ending, we got to work on those issues. I knew I could still be triggered, and the work that I did around with DHS just showed me where my triggers were, because they triggered everything, and what was I willing to resolve, and I had to look at the resources that I could tap in to help. Now, had I done all of this fully, I would have had a better picture in the very beginning, but I've had to learn some of this along the way, and just, do I have the support to help when it gets hard? And thank God I did. I have other daughters in particular, and sons, who are willing to step in and help when needed. My daughter here, Harmony, has lived with me for several years. And if it wasn't for her and her husband, over this last year of isolation and doing school from home, I don't know what I would have done without them. They were absolutely key in for me to be able to find balance, because they helped me with that schooling part. They've been the teacher's assistants this last year, so I could still work, and so that support was just critical. I don't know what I would have done in this last year without them. So being able to tap into those natural supports is critical. And I have to say that having them living here in my home with me, though it has brought, things we had to work out, it has been really helpful, because I had those co-parents. I didn't have to be a single grandparent. It has been a blessed resource. And if you've got those type of resources, will be a blessing. you know Looking at resources, that is something that if you're making a decision, you need to look at. because kids are expensive, and we want to be able to give the best to them. But if if you don't have the resources, what can you tap into, to assist you? Discipline. What can I add to my toolbox to support positive growth? Because we've had trauma in our family. I had, and we've had trauma in the past when I was raising my kids, and there were things I just didn't know because I just didn't know. And I didn't have the right supports, and I made mistakes and I didn't want to make them again. This time I really wanted to pass on wellness, so I had to become a better parent, and that is a always growing, always working on doing it better. So I had to learn how to be this continuous learner. I'm still attending workshops, I'm still attending a lot of different webinars so that I can learn about the diagnosis that my oldest child here has, and so that I can do it better, that I can work with her in the most positive way, and I can give her what she needs. So I really had to learn how to do discipline different, in a way that's going to be supportive, in a way that I'm going to be able to, provide for their needs, and advocacy. I had 3 kids who were on individual education plans as they grew. And I can tell you, I didn't know a quarter of what I know now around advocacy. That I can go into those individual education plan and I know my rights now. I didn't know them back then. I didn't know I could bring in people, to represent our family's needs. I didn't know how to fight for what we need, and I just didn't know what I didn't know, and I didn't know what I could do. There's also advocacy in mental health treatment, because my sweet song here has been at a high level of mental health care, and she's been in mental health care since she was 2 years old. And we stopped for a little bit because she had really stabilized, and then first grade came about, and that transition was really rough, and it caused a real backslide with her school. And it took until this year, actually, that's the one thing the pandemic brought us, is that since we brought her into our home, she was fully 100% getting what she needed. There was no bullies to trigger her. There wasn't too much activity around her. There wasn't teachers who had bias against her, who treated her in a way that triggered her. She got what she needed. She has excelled this year in school, and she has went down in level of care. She doesn't need what she needed before. But I had to fight all the way when she was 4 years old, 3, 4 years old. Her mental health therapist, was really on DHS side. They went to DHS side and told, was advocating to take her out of our home, and they weren't working with us as a family in any way, shape, or form. They didn't honor our family, in the way that we were doing things, because it wasn't their way, and I had to really fight to get that person fired, not maybe from their position, but from the case management of my granddaughter. I was not going to allow that person who was not aligned with our family to participate, and provide treatment for my granddaughter because she came in there in a biased way. And so we got a new person who actually worked with us, who helped her, and then the next time when she needed treatment, I went to a native program that provided that treatment, who came into our home and did that in an informed way, who didn't look, at the way that we made decisions or the way our house was and make biased decisions. And then lastly, so important, setting boundaries with my child. And my child, the birth mother, had decided these are her children and she gets to make decisions. And like I had to multiple times, put boundaries around, no, they're now my children and I'm making these decisions, because she didn't want certain decisions. She didn't want them around certain people. She has a great deal of anxiety. She has and it was like, I was like, no, I don't want your issues to be passed on to them. We're trying to pass on wellness, and so I really had to set boundaries, and I had to do some tough love. In fact, even up to this year, we had to do a break. It's like, no more visits. You're not doing visits if you cannot come into my home and honor my rules and honor, how I'm doing this, and there will be no coming in and arguing with me in front of the girls, and causing such, because that she remains one of my triggers. And so I will not allow myself to be triggered, and create that chaos in my home. We have done a lot of work to create in our environment a place of healing, a place of laughter, a place of song. We are a powwow family. We but we are, our drum group is called Four Directions. We're well known in the Northwest, and, so we want our house full of song, and full of healing, so those things that I had to change. I talked a little about the boundary issues. I mean, that's been an ongoing, and I have to revisit that whenever it is needed, and it's been a thing that I've just learned how to do better. It's a thing that I can now stop, the judgment of my daughter, because one of my issues is that when they were growing up, in order to get what they wanted, they used to really attack me with "you're a bad mother" messages, and just told me how bad a mother. I mean, it was typical teen things, but it was pretty brutal at times, and it has been such a trigger for me. And so I don't allow people to give me those kind of messages, because I know that I am doing the best I can, with what we've got. And I know that what we're doing is healing for our family and healing for our grandkids, but there was another little thing around that. I found that my other kids were comparing how I was parenting these two with how they were parented. And I was spoiling them, and so that they were like, you need to discipline them. They were looking for that hard discipline. And it's like, that's not what they need. I'm trying to do this better. I admit, I didn't parent all of you the very best. You got whipped sometimes. There was lots of yelling in our house, and I don't want to do that anymore. I want healing. I want wellness. I don't want trauma in our house. And my son-in-law, in one of those times when boundaries were pretty loose and I was fighting with my daughter and there was lots of yelling going on, and he came up and he just confronted me. What are you doing? You've said you don't want trauma here. And what are you doing? I stopped immediately. And I looked at him. I said, Victor, you're right. I walked out of the room. I went to my bedroom. I closed the door. And I will remember that every time. I remember that every time I start to get into it with Alicia. Because I remember this is not what I want to bring in my home. This, and I stopped. And I'm forever grateful to my son-in-law for pointing that out to me so that I could stop. So I have to be able to listen, and I have to be able to take those critiques, and I have to be able to draw the line. So I tell my other kids now. At first it was, I got mad at them. And tell them to be quiet. I'm doing what I'm doing, but then I felt like, well, maybe I'm doing it wrong. And and it's like, but more and more, I can now just tell them we're not passing on trauma. We're doing it differently. And I want you to stop this, and more, what we're having here in my home is exactly what I'm looking for. Just the other day, we were sitting, every day, we sit, we laugh and we laugh at each other and we sing with each other, and we're doing really positive change. And we're talking about, we had a hard time a couple weeks back, and we got to the point, it's like, let's start our day over. All of us, we need to start, and we apologized to each other early in the morning, and we started our day over. And we had a wonderful, one of the best days all together as a family. It was so beautiful, and so that's what we've done. Just focus on healing. Where triggers happen, I've identified this as a trigger, and I'm going to work on how to stop that. How do I stop myself? How do I send messages that are very clear about, I will not accept this type of message. This triggers me. So I might even just say, what you just said triggers me. Can you say that in a different way? And then one of the things that we've done for healing that has been beautiful, and particularly the last about a year and a half, pretty much since COVID, is I started a mindfulness exercise for the girls. They all sleep in the same room, and I noticed that my younger granddaughter been telling me that she can't sleep at night. And I've been noticing a little anxiety symptoms that people haven't really noticed yet, but she's telling me some of these things. So I started a little mindfulness exercise at night with the girls, and I started just started teaching them some breathing techniques, and let's just do this for 2 minutes. And I've been able to get them to do it for about 5 minutes. And we've even indigenized some of the mindfulness. So at their suggestion, we take a cup of water, and I talk about how to bring positive energy. I talk about how they can put positive energy into this water. And we all hold it and we do our breathing, and I ask them, send your positive, your kindness, your love into this cup of water. And we all hold that cup of water, and then each one of us have a drink afterwards to bring that in our body. So I've talked about how that the air we're bringing in is mixing with that water, in our blood, going to every cell, to be able to regenerate, to heal, to grow, and so it's really helpful with that cup of water. We do it maybe once a month, sometimes more, that particular exercise, to be able to, for them to see, how that water, is changing their thinking too. And my daughter has been able to sleep a little more. They sleep all night. We turn on some meditation music, or lately, Aurora's been wanting some soft piano music, and they go to sleep. Sweet songs out within less than 5 minutes sometimes, and they sleep, really a lot better now. But it's really, I'm going to tell you, that exercise, by me doing it every day, has given me a time to actually do mindfulness, and even though I'm kind of facilitating and leading, we listen and we do our breathing, or I ask them to just focus on the energy and the music, and just quiet their minds for about 5 minutes every day. Well, I'm getting that same thing, and it has helped me really bring a positiveness. It's really helped me, sit back and benefit from that kind of exercise. But one of the things also, my health, both physically and emotionally, I really have to, like, one of the things I do all the time is I'm working on losing weight. Now, I'm not always, in the last year, I gained the same 15, 20 pounds I think everybody gained during this COVID year. But last November, my daughters and I came together and we got to lose this weight. And we started working on it again, and I've lost the 20 pounds since November, and it makes me feel so much better. I need to lose more, but I'm at least at this weight, where my joints don't hurt so bad. I can move around more. I take care of what I'm eating. I know that when I eat bread and when I eat too much sugars, that my joints are going to suffer, and that I'm not going to be able to move as much. And one of the critical things that I need to be able to do with a 7 and 9-year-old is to be able to move, and I need to be able to, and if you have them younger, that you really need to move because they run away from you, but I need to be able to get them moving, if otherwise they're going to be as sedentary as I was, or I need to find ways, to be able to have them move, and that self-care, it's talking about self-care. It's so critical. For me, self-care is learning and doing other things. I'm going to talk a little bit more at the end, some of the things that I've been doing, to really help me do self-care, sometimes just a manicure and pedicure, of which I really need to go do because it's been a long time since I've been pretty much out of this house, and I need to start doing that piece again, and I also need to really learn how to advocate, and really be able to do it in multiple settings, and I help other people how to advocate now, so when people have come and I've gone into DHS meetings and helping other people advocate for themselves, and and just provided advice and what they need to do, helping people with advice around IEP meetings, or just in the schools, and just knowing and growing my resources, you know, and I've been in the mental health addictions field for a long, long time. And I thought I knew a lot of resources, but I didn't know as many as I needed to know, particularly around parenting special needs kids. There's so many resources for me at a state and a national level. I've really tapped into some of those, and they've been really helpful. The knowledge that I've learned has been really helpful in helping me do better, and that's what I've needed the most, and so I really want to talk about, that advocacy, particularly in DHS, child welfare, in behavioral health providers, in school settings. There's some really critical things that you need to think about, that you probably never thought about before, that becomes really important. Some of this I knew going in, and some of it I've been learning. I've been learning along the way. I've had the girls now in my care underneath my name, since my 9-year-old was 4. So it's been 5 years now that they've been directly under my care, not one of their aunts, and or uncles, but under my care. For DHS child welfare, and why weren't they under my care since the very beginning? Sweet Song would not have experienced the trauma she experienced. However, DHS will use your past against you. They will try and turn all of your recovery and your healing work into a deficit. And that's what they did to me. I had made mistakes even in recovery. One of those times back when my girls, were teenagers, and they were particularly coming at me for days about what a bad parent I was. And it was because they wanted me to leave them in the small town where we were raising them at the time. They wanted me to leave them there for a month while we went out on the powwow trail. They wanted me to leave them there alone. It's like, me trying to be a good parent was like, no, you don't get to stay here for a month by yourself. I don't care if you're going to stay, at this next door neighbor's. I don't know them well enough. There's just no way that you're staying here alone for a month, and there was a big fight, and it was pretty major, and I had totally lost it and did something I'd never done before. And when I've said I've spanked him or whipped him, to be one spank, to be a slap across the face, and this was a lot more, and I went to jail. That incident, I paid for that. Also went back to treatment. not because I had relapsed, but because I was so depressed, and I had friends in treatment, and they looked the other way. And they told me, because I, at that point, after getting out of jail, I was suicidal. My girls were gone for a short while, and and so they used that, and I did a lot of work after that. I did a lot of work in getting well again, and they used that against me, and they wouldn't play Sweet Song with me, and so she suffered as a result of that, because had they placed her, at least she would have had that stability to have one person, somebody who really loved her, and she wouldn't have been taken out of my home where she was, and and then they used family splitting. They will also make everybody in the household have those background checks, or anybody that they're going to spend time with, and they'll use that against you. But they use family splitting, and I've seen this over and over and over again in many cases, not just ours. I thought it was just us, but I've seen it too many times. And I realized I was talking to a coworker who is a social worker, and the same thing happened with their white family, and I realized, my God, it's just how they do things. It's a system rooted in law. They split people in order to find evidence. And so they use the same technique with families. They split you. You got to go into that. You got to go into that being really united. You got to go into that. However, it's so hard, if people really aren't firmly in recovery, so the dysfunctional parts of the family that are still there, they just use that and find a way to really split you, and one of the tools that you got to have in your box, that I know it's really hard, I haven't seen too many people use it. I beg people, please put in a complaint. Complain. Complain everywhere. Go up to the state legislator if you need to and complain. Complain, complain, complain. And I know you got to just keep doing it over and over again. But until there's enough documentation to show there is a problem, they will say there's no problem. And if we're going to get the system, we need that documentation in the system if you're going to really do some system changes. We know that in many states, but I absolutely know in Oregon and in Multnomah County in particular, that there is a gross, disparity in the number of Native kids taken out of the home. At one point, we had a quarter, of Native kids taken out of the home in this one county. It was a gross disparity, and we got to find ways to change that, but that's another topic that I won't get into. But I'm going to tell you that documentation and complaining is going to be important. Behavioral health. Now, if you've never reviewed your intake assessment or your child's intake assessment, get it. Get the whole thing. Read it. Understand it. If you don't understand it, ask for other people to read it, help you understand it. Or any reports you're getting sent anywhere, make sure you know what's on that, because there are several things that happen. Misrepresentation, they take history wrong, they document it wrong, there's bias in that history. They talk about things in a way that makes you look like you're morally bad. You know, like if you've had multiple partners, you know, that goes in there as that you're a morally bad person. You know, and, you know, what is that about? You know, that's bias. You know, and what is the diagnosis? Is it correct? Because if it's not correct, your child or yourself will not get the right treatment. You know, ask for second opinions. You have a right. If you have Medicaid services, you have a right. That child has a right for ask for, and that is at the federal level. So that's in every state. You can ask for a second opinion. Do it. You know, review the treatment plan. Is it happening? Is it relevant? Ask for updates if it's not. Be more proactive. Get what you need. You know, review notes to look for bias. You know, and are you being treated with respect? Again, this is a federal mandate. Are you being informed? You know, are you or your child or your family rights being followed? This is a federally mandated. They have to do this if you have Medicaid or Medicare. You know, and if your rights are being violated, complain. I was able to get a different therapist for a sweet song because I complained and I complained again. You know, and when at the time, because she was still under DHS, they were saying, oh, you know, you know, we don't like this. You can't not have, you know, and it's like, we have that right. We have that right. She needs to get the treatment that she needs. I have the right to ask for a change of therapist, you know, and so you can officially complain, and you can do it at multiple levels. We did get, if I hadn't complained, we would not have got a change of therapist, and we would have had this therapist that was fully aligned with DHS and not providing our family with what they need. They didn't provide the family with any supports at all, you know, and so once we got that, we started seeing a change. You know, schools, individual education plans, again, you have the right to bring people with you, and that is at a federal level. You know, so you have the right to bring people in those meetings to advocate for you. Sometimes it's better if you don't advocate for yourself, that you bring in a professional, that you bring in a therapist. And we have a great therapist right now. She's been there. She's been advocating for Sweet Song to have one-on-one. You know, we've been able to really be able to actually bring in education, bring in ideas, fresh ideas, you know, to the school. You know, there has been changes made, and we got a long ways to go. But during that, I'm have gained respect with the school. They know that they can't just roll over us, that they need to pay attention to her rights and her, you know, what she's getting, and make sure that it gets done. You know, and if you're not on IEP, you're still going to have teachers conferences. You know, when you go in those teachers conferences, prepared to talk with the teacher on any concerns you may have. Write down examples of the concern. Don't go in there without something written, so that, because I know that sometimes it's really hard when you go in there and you forget what you want to talk about. You know, so make sure you bring that in, you know, and ask what you could do to support your child. You know, how can you support them at home? What can you do? You know, where can you go find supports? You know, and I also get involved in a lot of the school committees, you know, where I can, and what I put in the efforts that I can, but at least I get on a couple of the advisement committees, you know, so because your voice and your impact, can be really important, and learn how to have a strong voice, so that you can bring up, what is the gaps and what is needed, so if you start with your teacher conferences, just being able to learn how to identify those, have people help you. Again, bring somebody along that, maybe has either done this or is a professional, so that and you start to learn the skills, so that your voice gets stronger. And as you get involved in some of the committees, your skills grow. Some of the committees even have some trainings that you can take, and that can really help build those advocacy skills. It's been great for me. I've done some of the trainings, and and have learned some of those advocacy skills, so that I don't just go in and rant and roaring, that I go in with some very specific observations on gaps and some suggestions for systems change, and some ways to change it. And that is on, in other areas also. Oops, sorry, I'm clicking buttons on the wrong computer. And the last 10 minutes, I really want to, or 5 minutes, however long I have. It's hard because I'm not seeing what I normally would see on the Power Hour. I feel a little bit isolated. It's like, whoa, I'm kind of alone. Is anybody out there? I'm not even seeing the comments. But so self-care, it's critical. Absolutely critical of all the stuff I've talked about today. This is so important. It's also very individual. What you need is what you need. And it may be you don't even know what you need yet. And you got to find out what you need. So you got to try. You got to try a few things to figure it out. And so what I use may work for you, but it may not work for you. But I know one thing that is pretty universal: supports, internal and external supports. Whether it's learning how to be an advocate, whether it's going to that parenting class or doing a webinar, or just coming to the Power Hour here, because this has been an awesome, I drop in often, at least once a week, because I hear such wonderful healing ideas. Often I'll write it down, I'll put them on my my notepad here. I've got a whole thing full of things that I've heard that can give me inspiration, that can get me thinking in a different way, that can add to my toolbox, and I have lots of them. I don't like to burden any one source, so I have multiple sources, except for, I suppose, my daughter that lives with me, does, do a lot, and I also support her. So we support each other. It's a mutual benefit. I support her in multiple ways, of course, financially, and it's hard to live in the city nowadays, pretty expensive, so it's a good exchange. She's able to have a good, safe place, and we've worked hard on being good mutual supports. Got a long ways to go. It's an ever present working on it. Another thing for me has been gardening. It is something that gives me great pleasure. I love watching the plants come up, whether it's medicinal plants or food or just flowers, to go sit and with the flowers and just bless my soul, and just be with them, as and sit there and just watch the beauty around me. And then when we get to go, and harvest, in the last year we've been harvesting, our vegetables and our fruits, and last year, since I've been starting to do medicinal plants, I learned how to make salve, and it's been such a wonderful and awesome self-care for me. You know, Another self-care thing, which may not sound like a self-care thing, but I can tell you, taking care of my bills, because I used to not take care of them, even though I was making good money, going throwing away my money, and I did throw away my money, was more important some months than taking care of my bills. But then that caused extra stress in my life, which was just then, adding to my stress, because then fees would come, and man, them defaults on my student loan cost me $10,000, and so the extra burden in my life was great, and so just learning how to fiscally take care of myself has been really important. Setting those healthy boundaries, taking my meds, has been important. Eating healthy, trying to lose weight, just doing that, getting out and exercising, mindfulness, doing that. And another thing with my grandkids, one thing has been really important. I set those bedtimes and those schedules, and we stick to them. It has been really important for them to have that schedule, but it's also important for me, because I need me time. So after they go to bed, I could still play a little bit. I can have that quiet, that is important for my soul, for my, growth. I could say, I could sit and pray. I can do what I need to do and be able to think, so that has been a really important thing, and I'm going to come back to those supports, because I'm not always like, I can't get on a bike. They scare me, and I used to be able to, but I can't now. I'm hoping to be able to figure out a way. I seen somebody had tricycle the other day, an adult tricycle, and I'm thinking about, man, I want to find one of those, because maybe then I can get out there and bike with the girls. So I use lots of extra supports, to be able to get them the exercise they need, whether it's with one of the girls. That's where their birth mother has been really important. She goes biking with them, and so that's an important thing I want her to do. I want her to get them out and get their exercise. If I can't do it, I got to find somebody to do it. We also have a program here in town, NAA, Native American Youth Association, that I sign them up for everything that they could sign up. I found out Sweet Song loves golf. She's actually a natural golfer. So they're getting out and doing some of the programs with them, and being able again to do that exercise that's so important for young people, so that they can stay healthy, and hopefully that, that they don't get the ills that I presently have around high blood pressure, diabetes, and all. I'm hoping that when they become my age, that they don't have these things, because they've lived a good life, and that we set them on the course, of wellness, and that is what I really hope and pray that happens, for them. And Shailene, is there any questions? Has there been any questions that have come up that I could answer in the brief moment that we're still here?
I don't see any at the moment.
Okay. All right. I think unless my clock is wrong, I think we're very close to the end.
Yep, you're good.
Okay, then that's pretty much all that I had today. Again, I really hope that you got something out of this and be able to think about it. And I hope it's been supportive for you, in your journey of raising your grandkids, and that you're able to find those internal and external supports so that you too can pass on wellness, and thank you, for this really sacred job that you're doing. And I really hope that, and if your kids out there and you have relatives, that are raising grandkids, go support them. They need it. They need your support. They need help, in raising those kids. Help them, take them for an afternoon. Go get them that great bike ride. Do things with them that will help them grow and be in wellness, and or if you have friends or any of you who know grandparents, just give them some extra love. They really need it, and they need that support and that kindness, to be able to do the best job they can do. And thank you so much, Shailene, for this opportunity, and for Native Wellness for this opportunity to be able to share a little bit, of my experiences and what I've seen.